Hey, you made it, week 2. Good on you. Pretty excited to hear that. Not sure how excited you are, but I'm gosh darn excited. So, let me put a little warning up before this video. Today we're going to talk about some of the components of the brain. It's going to be boring. I'm going to try and keep it super short. It's just base information that you need to know. But yeah, read up in the book, expand on some of the concepts that we have. If you're super interested in it, this topic, reach out to me. I have this giant book right here. This is on the human brain. I love the brain and all of its workings, but I will say that the biological components of it can get a lot. So let's just work through it, right? We're just gonna pile through it. Before we get into it, a couple of housekeeping things. Your exam this week, okay? So you got 1 week, relaxed, sipping an umbrella drink by the pool. This week, we're knee deep in it. You're gonna have that exam. So again, I should have checked before I made this video. Maybe I'll put something up right here. I'm gonna learn how to do that. To tell you that it will be a certain number of questions. You only have to answer less than that and really put yourself into the responses. Do not give me a canned response. It will make me sad. I don't want to be sad. All right? Cool. So now let's get into it. First, what the heck is a brain besides the thing up here? So it is this constant, ignoring the fact that it's an organ with all these parts. It is just a constant stream of information. It is a combination of electrical impulses and chemical reactions, and it is all interconnected to our sense organs, and it processes, and it's unknown and known at the same time. If we think that our consciousness, subconsciousness, all of that comes from here, no one knows. But in terms of the biological, physiological components, that they got figured out. So first off, what are the key features of it? 1, the brain processes information. Okay, that's number 1 on all of it. Everything that comes into it, from all the different peripheral systems, it processes it. 2, it sends signals. 1,000 cells are interspersed with air. 10% of those are neurons. They have electrical signals that go between the different parts, but then when we're talking about different cells and the neurotransmitters, that's going to become chemical. You don't have to go any further than that into it. Enough. Electrical, chemical, success. 3, it's modular. There are different components, different parts, but all of the things are connected. When we are talking about things like sensations, right? I touch this cup. I taste this coffee, right? I feel the temperature of it. I see you. These are very localized, lower level functions. So they're localized to the different components of the brain. Then we have higher level functions. Memory, language, perception. All of these things are going to be on a much higher level, and they are going to include interconnectedness of the different parts of the brain. Okay? Next, we have individuality. My brain, different than your brain, different than her brain, different than his brain, right? All of us are different. So what makes it different are our experiences that are going to shape our brain, our DNA, our genetics, our environment. All of these components are going to swap up your brain and make it a little different for each person. And finally, one of the most impressive things, and the things that as educators you guys are going to be dealing with so much, is the idea of brain plasticity. This is the idea that our brain gets built and pruned, so all these neurons and these transmissions adapt as we grow, right? Adapt as we have experiences. So the brain becomes more efficient, it takes on more knowledge, it's just amazing on its adaptability. which is good, because imagine that if you just got stuck with your brain as you were born with it, eek, right? You would just be some sort of snail creature going through life. But luckily, it's not that. You are not a snail creature. We get to do more. So, think something that you need to think about, and I really want you to focus on, because there is no true answer to it. So I explained that the brain is made up of electrical currents and chemical reactions, right? Think about how the heck does that turn into experiences? How the heck does that turn into memories, right? Something that is tangible or visible or emotional, an experience, how does that happen and get stored? Along with that, there's so much subjectivity to it, right? Think about your emotions. It's different than other people's emotions. Think about your thoughts. Just watching this video, though, everyone watching it is going to be like, that's boring. I get that. That's objective. This is objectively boring, I think. Other thoughts that might go through it is going to be subjective. You know, do you like my shirt? Subjective. My delivery style, the content, interesting talking about the brain, those kind of things are all going to be subjective components. And, you know, where does this come from? It's going to be a combination of all these inputs that we get from our eyes, light coming in, from our ears, the sound coming in. All these are going to be processed in the different components of our brain and then added into this subjectiveness and these thoughts and these experiences that we have. So we have action. Brainstem is automatically action. Brainstem is back here, along with your primary motor cortex. This is going to be your cerebellum, your basal ganglia, and this includes all gross motions. Not gross as in ill, gross as in significant. We have memories, and these are going to happen at the brain cells. Okay, we're going to get into that when we get into memory. I think there's 2 or 3 chapters dedicated to it, so stay seated because it's going to get exciting, just not today. Language, we're going to have production, we're going to have analysis. This is the idea that we are taking these abstract things, this thing that I'm looking at right here, I could then take it into my eyes, process it in my brain, use language that you will likely understand, and out it goes. This often helps to display ideas to other people, convey what these ideas are, and also it is a tool to help us reflect on our own ideas. So then in the limbic system, the amygdala, we have our emotions. These are then sent to the prefrontal cortex where we're going to react to them. A lot of times when we hear about someone with an injury to the prefrontal cortex, they are going to have issues dealing with their emotions, reacting to their emotions. Next, we have thoughts. These are sensations, perceptions, emotions, turning them into action plans then, right? Like we have thoughts, what do we do with it? I have a thought that I'm thirsty and I want some coffee. I create an action plan going through my motor area, get a drink, right? Comes from here, goes to there, amazing. We have sensations where we have all these things pulled in from our peripheral system. Something interesting about the brain, we talked about the plasticity of it, right? And the idea that we can maybe adapt our brain, prune our brain. With that comes an idea of if you have sensory areas that are working and then they no longer work, that's actually going to cause issues in your brain. So let's say a good example is someone that has lost their hearing. If they do not go ahead and get a hearing aid or some sort of mechanism that might allow them to hear, those areas and the neural pathways that would receive the ear, the sounds, the ear noise, let's call it ear noise, and have it registered at different parts of the brain, those neural pathways are going to get pruned, which means they're no longer going to be there. which means some of these connections that happen are going to be either delayed or they're going to not be as involved. So there is internal impact to any sort of peripheral sensory limitation. Now let's go over some interesting, these are actually interesting, I think, brain facts, okay? I'm gonna slide over so that way I can see if I could put them up here. We're gonna see. If it doesn't work, then it just looks like I'm doing this. But if it does work, very cool. Okay, some brain facts. Number one, big structure. The brain is highly compact, but it smooths out. If it smooths out with all of its wrinkles laid out and the cortex lined out, it could be 2.5 feet. Number two, connectivity. There are 100 billion neurons going on inside that head of yours right now, with potential connections within the brain, and then those, turning out to just, it's astronomical. The abilities that we have, astronomical. 3, boop, growth. So our brain, when we are growing as a fetus, the neurons are growing at 250,000 neurons per minute in these little tiny fetus brains. That's insane. So that means you are born essentially with the same amount of neurons as you might have now, sans the pruning that happens. Crazy. The thing is, so why can't a baby be as awesome as I am? That's a great question. Because those neurons are not developed yet. They're there, but they're not put into use. The pathways aren't created. So it takes a little time for that little baby to become as awesome as you are. The next one is the use. There's always this fallacy going around that we only use 10% of our brain. That's not true. We use all of our brain. We use all of it. Some of us more than others, but we use all of it. Regeneration. We can regenerate our brain, but we can also lose parts of our brain. Like I mentioned with losing our hearing, those parts of the brain, the connectivity gets lost. So you need to exercise your brain. All those apps out there, there's some truth to it. You need to exercise it in order to keep it good. And finally, interesting fact right here, pain-free zone. There's no pain receptors inside the actual brain. What about a headache? Headache's not your brain, okay? It's not your brain. But if I were to take off the top of your noggin and just nothing. I mean, I'd screw things up, but you wouldn't feel it. Okay, so there are a couple different parts of the brain that are important, the lobes, we'll call them. This part, I suggest you go ahead and read at least this section of the chapter on the lobes, because it's super important. We have our frontal lobe, which includes our prefrontal cortex. This is involved in, I'll put it up here, maybe, decision-making, planning, reasoning, and that's the prefrontal cortex. In the motor cortex, this is voluntary muscles. This isn't, spasms. This is, I want to raise my hand. Okay, that's what's involved there. And the brachial area, which involves hearing. The parietal lobe has the sensory cortex, which is pain, temperature, touch, all of those components. Spatial processing happens here. Temporal is the auditory cortex. Based on auditory, what do you think happens here? Go ahead, take a second, think about it. I can't hear you. What's the answer? See what I did there? Can't hear. Auditory, hearing, language, things like that. The occipital. That one I feel like you should know at this point. The visual cortex is nested here. And the limbic system, which has the hippocampus, which is for your memories, and your amygdala, which is your emotions and your fears. there is research being done on the lack of fear, or individuals that lack fear. There's a climber, Alex Hanold, who does solo free climbing, which means no ropes climbing, good chance of death. So they're kind of looking at his brain to see, is there a chance that this portion of his brain is different than ours? So those are the main components. Get a little familiar with them. Also take some time to read up on the neuron and the unipolar, bipolar, and multipolar different neurons. What does it mean? I don't know. Go look it up. And then maybe I could put it here. The whole neuron. There's the axon terminal. There's the axon. There's a cell body. There's dendrites. All of these different components. Go ahead. Read up on it. It's amazing. All right? Hopefully you are still awake and still functioning. 16 minutes, I think we're at. All right, so now I'm gonna go on and see if I could put in all this magic. You go ahead and go through the labs, go through the workbook, do the readings, and I'll see you in the next session.